Hi, and welcome to my first episode of Lorehammer. At the request of several people, I'm going to be going through the background to my own free city, the free city of Moltenheart, and the process that I went through to get to this point. So, for today's introduction, I thought I'd just read through my initial background, which covers both the realm that Moltenheart is in and the early history of the city. And depending on how well we go in future Lorehammer episodes, I'll go through the different factions in Moltenheart and how they are slightly different to the Dwarden or Elves in other parts of the realms, and the way that I've done this and represented this both in the background and on the tabletop. So to start with, what I touched on in the last podcast with Luke and myself, the background came essentially from an idea of a quite fiery young Warden King searching for his lost homeland in Shamon when Azerheim reopened its gates. I was influenced a lot by Tolkien and things like that, but obviously wanted to put a Mortal Realms feel to it. So what I'll do is I'll go through this initial bit, and yeah, hopefully if you've got any questions you can post them up and I'll do my best to answer it. If you want to contact me directly, I'm the Real Gotrek on Twitter. Okay. The free city of Moltenheart. The blood of our ancestors unites us. At the far reaches of the Yorn Mountains, in the south of the realm of Shamon, the great river of molten steel that the Dwarden of Shamon named the Forge Soul, splinters into a steaming delta of liquid metal tributaries known as Grimnir's Beard. The Dwarden who first settled the region in the Age of Myth named the peak that rises there amid the forks of Grimnir's Beard as Karak Zanklad, or the Crimson Armoured Mountain in the common tongue. These ancient Dwarden dug deep into the copper-rich mountain and carved out a city to rival the greatest of the Khazalid empires of antiquity. Great stone causeways were constructed across the forks of Grimnir's Beard, and the shrines that were built to Grungni and Grimnir deep in the heart of the mountain were truly beautiful to look upon. Here, in those ancient days, beneath the ruddy glow of the mountain, the unique Dwarden culture of Karak Zanklad took shape and thrived. In the depths of their mountain home, the Dwarden mined the riches of Shamon, minerals, metals and gems of great beauty. Yet all of these things would pale into insignificance next to the greatest discovery of Karak Zanklad. In the very bowels of the earth, in the deepest heart of the mountain, far below the rushing molten metal of the Forge Soul, throbbed a magical artifact of incredible power, a relic of the world that was. It was the son of the king that discovered the chamber. Wandering in the deepest regions of the mountain, as was his wont, the young Dwarden prince was consumed by visions of Grimnir's final duel with Volcatrix in the realm of fire. The sounds of titanic battle echoed through the deep caverns, and the young Dwarden followed the cries of rage and the sounds of axe on diamond-hard scale. A soft glow led him towards an immense cavern. A honeycomb of tunnels and shafts all seemed to converge into the natural amphitheatre at whose end lay the titanic, intricately carved and softly glowing structure that would come to be known as the Doors of Grungni. The specific nature of this artifact was, and continues to be, a mystery. The Doors of Grungni are, and were, to become one of the greatest enigmas of the age. Many scholars and curious adventurers travelled to Karak Zanklad in order to behold the intricately carven doors and attempt to unravel the mystery of the powerful runes that kept the slumbering power beyond the portal secure and undiscovered. Although all who approached could feel the palpable force emanating from behind the titanic barrier, the massive rune-covered iron doors could not be breached. Unfortunately, it was not just the free peoples whose curiosity was piqued by the mystery. Word spread to all corners of Shamon, and even beyond, It was only a matter of time before word reached the scabby ears of Skaven spies that infested every corner of the realms. Upon a throne of Duarden skulls in the darkest corner of the realm of Shamon, a vermin lord Warpseer, servant of the great horned rat himself, brooded over the potential power contained beneath Karak's unclad, and lusted for it. In the manner of its kind, the demon plotted and schemed until it believed its time was right. Its pawns were securely placed, and every contingency had been accounted for. Taking the Hull's defenders completely unprepared, a massive horde of ratmen burst forth from the myriad of concealed tunnel entrances that had been strategically excavated beneath the mountain. At the head of the horde stalked the immense, lithe form of the Vermin Lord itself. The Skavens surged into the city from numerous carefully constructed ambush points, and rapidly forced the Duarden back to the upper halls on a wave of rusted weaponry, filth-encrusted claws, and yellowed fangs. Despite the initial ferocity of the attack, however, the defenders rallied in typical Duarden fashion, and through sheer tenacity began to slow and eventually halt the Skaven horde's advance. Not, however, before the lower halls and the chamber of the doors of Grungni were firmly in the hands of the Ratmen. The siege of Karak-Zunclad lasted many months. Although the Skaven fought with the savagery of their kind, the stubbornness of the Duarden slowly drove the Ratmen back through the layers of their city. The skill of the Duarden was far superior to the invaders, but the Skaven appeared to have an inexhaustible supply of filthy bodies to throw at the axes and hammers of the Duarden. All the while, as battle raged above, the Warpseer spellcraft fought against the power of the greatest of the ancient Duarden runemakers. Although gifted with the sorcerous power of the horned rat himself, the demon's efforts were in vain. The doors remained steadfastly closed. And as the siege wore on, it began to become apparent to the Vermin Lord that it was not going to be able to break through the magic of the doors before the innately craven nature of the Skaven surfaced, and the force was completely routed. The Skaven's courage was crumbling, and the threat of the Vermin Lord's chastisement would only maintain discipline for so long. The demon had run out of time. It devised a plan that would both enact vengeance upon the Duarden and at the same time prevent the power behind the doors of Grungni being uncovered and thus falling into the hands of the hated Duarden, before the demon could return and claim its prize. Before fleeing and leaving the last of its slaves to the axes and hammers of the Duarden, the Vermin Lord breached the banks of the two fiery rivers that bounded the mountain and, utilising the very tunnels that had facilitated the Skaven assault, flooded the lower levels of Karak-Zunclad with molten metal. Many thousands of Skaven and Duarden were killed instantly as the superheated ore surged up through the lower levels of the city. Many more died a slow, torturous death, trapped in pockets of air or in chambers that were hurriedly sealed off as the molten metal burst rapidly into the reaches above them. The Skaven had been defeated, but it was a Pyrrhic victory for the people of Karak-Zunclad. Having lost over 2/3 of its citizens to either the Skaven or the Molten Flood, and knowing that the proximity of the rivers outside would continue to feed the residual pools in the mountain's heart long after the initial massive surge had subsided, the surviving Duarden were forced to flee the mountain and their homes. These survivors of the once great hold became a race of wanderers that dispersed across the wilds, or in a few isolated cases into the skies of Shamon. The dispossessed and scattered Duarden clans eked out whatever meagre existence they could in the few remaining strongholds of order across Shamon and beyond, as the powers of the Chaos Gods waxed across the realms. It was not until emissaries of the god King Sigmar began arriving amongst these disparate communities with offers of sanctuary that the remaining dispossessed of Karak-Zunclad, at least those that had not chosen to ascend into the skies, were welcomed into Azerheim with all that was left of their kin. Okay, so that's the ancient history, if you like, of the Free City. If you like this, tune in next time and we'll go through the end of the Age of Chaos and the reopening of Azerheim and what that meant for the foundation of Moltenheart. Thanks for listening.